Good evening, wherever you're coming in from. My name is Luke Bragg. I am one of the co-founders of Profila. Um, and in preparation for our token launch next week, where we're visiting some of the things we worked on earlier, really about the philosophy of Profila. We are absolutely a mission company above all, everything else. And we think that drives everything we do, how we do our business, what features we want to create in the future, and how we think of our role in what we imagine is a much better internet. Um, and so today we're going to talk about the first article, the first chapter of the Profila Way, called the Profila Way, which lays out some basic tenets that we'll follow up with in the days to come. So I'm going to kind of just talk through. I wrote this article, so I'm just going to talk through some of the concepts and give some of the background um, on how we approach things and why we think that how we're approaching things is the correct way and the better way for the internet. As an American and also a political scientist, I revere Thomas Jefferson, so I was very happy to pay homage or steal a bit of his wonderful wording for the first paragraph, which I'm actually going to read. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that each and every human being has an inalienable sovereignty over their thoughts, their sentiments, their intentions and aspirations, their preferences, their wants, their needs and desires. All of it, every last bit. And that's really at the basics what Profila is about. It is about rebalancing the uneven relationship and power structure now where we individuals are users of platforms, but then we are the product. We are what's being sold to brands and other folks who want to market to us. When I think about the history of the internet, and I'm old enough to remember the history of the internet. We did not have the internet when I was in high school, and it was only my first year of college that I was first exposed to the internet. So I'm old enough to remember GeoCities and Alta Vista and all those early platforms, well before Yahoo or Google or anything like that, and obviously well before social media. And the internet had a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of idealism baked into it, that this was going to democratize how we interacted with each other, how we interacted with society. And you know, that led originally to kind of a decentralized, whether it was blogs or again, GeoCity sites, things like that. But eventually, social media sites started coming up. I remember Friendster. I was on Friendster. I was on MySpace, and I had heard about Facebook, but in the mid-aughts, it was still confined to universities. You had to have an edu.edu address in order to sign up, and they were kind of rolling out university by university. I think it was mid-late 2007 that they then opened the platform beyond that, and you know, people flooded in. I remember with great vividness those first months. I had been out of high school about 15 years at that point, and had lost a lot of touch with a lot of friends because I had moved abroad. I had been abroad for about 10 years there. And just going through my yearbook or thinking about friends that I hadn't talked to in a long time and searching for them on Facebook and finding them and connecting them. And it was incredible. It felt great. And it allowed me to reconnect with a lot of old friends and help maintain friendships. People forget that I think the news feed on Facebook only came about, I think, in 2009. So that means for the first couple of years, you had to go to someone's individual page to actually see what they were doing. There was no single feed of updates from folks. And it was for family and friends. Everybody tried to keep their parents off until later in the cycle, but it was your friends, it was your college friends, it was your high school friends, it was the people you met traveling. And that was also a big thing. I did a lot of traveling in the 90s, or in Eastern Europe and other places. And to have a name pop in your head and find them on Facebook was just such a joy at the time. And that's what they were at the beginning. They were this incredible place to connect with the people you loved and liked and knew. And it was a smart business model from their part to get the numbers, get the traction. get investors to understand that once there was some sort of volume, that this was going to be a very lucrative opportunity for the default, which is advertising. And from the late 19th century to onwards, advertising has been a huge supplier of revenue for these sort of platforms that people go to, whether it's the New York Times or magazines or obviously the internet and social media. And so it slowly became an advertising platform, which again is understandable. They got to keep the lights on. They got to keep their investors happy. So these platforms had to do these sort of things. But it forced them to move in a direction where their interests were no longer aligned with ours in any way, shape, or form. That their interests were nudging us to interact, whether those interactions were positive or negative, to post more, to find out more about us. And people were open to that because it was a different time. You didn't mind putting in, I think in my Facebook profile, I was clocking trips that I took or places that I'd lived. Personal information, we're giving it to them. And as I think Zuckerberg said one time, that's because they're idiots. We were putting all this information in his platform, making it more valuable to him and his shareholders. Nothing wrong with that, but it just evolved in a different way. And it got to the point, I'm not sure when I started using Facebook a lot less, or more specifically, started using Messenger and WhatsApp, essentially private messaging, group messaging, and no longer, or very less often, going to my feed in Facebook. Because the ratio of content that I cared about, somebody's holiday or someone's pictures of someone's kids or whatever, that ratio from that to the things I didn't ask for, whether it's sponsored posts or just things, again, I didn't sign up for that they're guessing that I like. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. And once that ratio got so skewed, it just wasn't that interesting anymore. And I found myself, I think like a lot of people, sharing pictures more in private chats and private groups, less so on Facebook or I think Instagram evolved a bit slower from beautiful pictures to influencers and corporate kind of messaging, which is what most of it is now, unfortunately. So these platforms started with an ideal, but that ideal couldn't pay the bills. And so they had to evolve to the normal kind of ways to make money, which is advertising. In the early days of Profila, I often worried about Facebook or Instagram or whoever getting wind of us and be able to change directions and very quickly be able to throw 500 developers at what we were trying to do. And then at some point I realized that their paradigm was so entrenched that there was no chance that they were going to be able to turn that ship and evolve from scraping and observed behavior and tracking and surveillance. How do you get out of the mindsets overnight, even if you see a threat? Usually in that situation with human nature, you're just going to double down on your model. Now, in my studies, I've done a lot of study on Thomas Kuhn, who is the popularizer of the expression paradigm shift. He wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution, which is about Copernicus, and how he won in the end with a heliocentric model of the galaxy, or I'm sorry, the solar system, as opposed to the Ptolemy that was centered around the Earth. And he did so not by criticizing the previous model, but by coming up with something different and something that answered the questions and solved the problems better. So the large platforms cannot solve this problem that we find ourselves in, where we are products to someone else's platform, that brands know that to find people, to acquire customers, they need to be where people are, which are social media platforms. They can't change, most likely. But you can't create something better unless you have a complete vision of what that looks like. And that's what we've been very, very conscious to do these last few years. And it's come from all the conversations we've had with so many different types of people and stakeholders in this world to what would work. What's a better equilibrium between individuals and organizations, between individuals and the platform, and how would we conceive our role? And as our CEO Sean likes to say, people are our partners and brands are our customers. So we're essentially helping you go to market with the most accurate, authentic, and valuable information about you. And once that is a matured idea, why would a brand pay Facebook for bad data about you, unethical data about you, scraped, tracked, surveilled data about you, when they can come to you for the best stuff? We like to joke that we are like Walter White in Breaking Bad, because we're telling people, you create the good stuff and you control the supply. That's a very powerful message that we're trying to convey. So our model, the Profila Way, is based on that idea that people are our partners, and both individuals and brands will benefit from this new paradigm, because brands spend so much time on acquisition, and they're doing so in very, very noisy environments. Your inbox, your social media feeds, and they have to scream, and they have to be provocative and tantalized to get that 1 second of attention, because they're competing with all the others and they're trying to do the exact same thing. You can see it escalating over and more every day, the shock value and the clickbait that comes. Profila is your quiet place. And the idea is that when you log into Profila, you are the center of the universe. And you can create a Profila that is much more accurate and authentic and valuable than anything out there about you now. And that's the key. There's no reform for the current paradigm. It's about creating a new data set that's just more valuable to the people who want it, and giving you full control, complete control over who has access to which parts of your Profila through data subscriptions, through smart contracts. So that some brand may want your insights about who you are as a traveler, and someone else may want your fashion sense or your entertainment choices, things like that. You have full control with the idea of consent, transparency, and revocability, something that we will talk about a lot in the next few days. That is our model, that is our paradigm. And we built our platform with that in mind. We think about features with that in mind. And we want to be very clear what we will do and what we won't do, which is also covered in a future chapter, so that if we ever violate your trust, we're done. And so chapter 3 says we want to paint ourselves into a corner by saying these things, and I'll get to that at another time. I ask a couple of questions. When we talk to brands a lot, we ask some questions or bring up some topics. What if an empowered human being is simply a better customer? What if a consensual and transparent relationships are more fruitful for both sides, for individuals and brands? And what if the spray and pray quantity market that we see every day, there was an alternative that said, I don't need anything now from you, but when I do, I'll let you know and you give me a best offer. Because as I said, when you're in Profila, you're the center of the universe and there's nothing social in there. You're not seeing other people's comments, you're not seeing anything else. You're seeing the content from the brands and organizations that you've let in the door, that have asked your consent and you've given it, and their permission to market to you. And in that symbiotic relationship, they now know more about you than they ever have before. Facebook knows your location, your gender, your age, whatever, but they don't know what's in my head and they don't know what's in my heart. They can guess, and sometimes the guesses are okay. But Profila, through our self-discovery quizzes on a wide variety of topics, that's really my expressed things that I care about, my expressed sentiments and preferences. That is unavailable to anyone right now without some serious stalking. And because of that, brands know more about you and they can put you in more accurate segments. So if a brand says, okay, we're looking for, we've got a lot of customers, but we have a campaign we think is going to be perfect for men between 40 and 50 in Switzerland. Okay, now that those messages now for me, receiving those, are more relevant and interesting to me than something that's just intended for an entire audience. Because that's what Instagram is, or if you follow a page on Facebook, they're putting a post and that goes to everybody. Now, they can boost it to certain segments, but it's one message for an entire audience, and it's all about acquisition. We are not an acquisition play, at least right now. We are a retention play. We are where brands can bring their best customers, learn more about them, unclutter their lives, send them less advertising and communication, and get more out of them by matching them with relevant ads and services and such in a trusted environment, in a quiet place. That is Profila. So that's really the basis of the Profila Way. We knew that we wanted to be different. We did not want to build a Me Too social media platform. That was never in our intention. We started out caring about privacy and understand that that's simply an enabler of relationships. Profila is in the relationships business. And we want to build our incentive structures to cultivate better relationships and better interactions. If you've ever seen a demo of mine, I will often say that the other social media platforms, or social media platforms in general, if it's two people screaming obscenities at each other, they're fine with that. They're fine with bots. They're fine with fake users and fake brands and fake everything, because they care about those numbers. They care about the volume of interactions. We care about the quality of relationships. That's where our model is consent and revocability. If a brand subscribes to you and you no longer find value in what they're sending you, you can either turn the volume down, or you can revoke the contract and they lose your access to your data and they lose access to your feed. We think that's a much better model to sustain a business going forward, where we can evolve in terms of features and other superpowers we want to give people and brands. But our core mission doesn't need to change because it's simply a better, different paradigm than what exists now. And we're very, very proud of what we've built. We're proud of how we think about these things. And over the next few days, I've got some other topics to talk about as we explore the Profila Way. So again, my name is Luke Bragg. I'm one of the co-founders of Profila. We've got our token launch starting next week. We'll talk about that in some of the articles as well. And each day for the next few days, we'll just be highlighting one of the articles we've written over the years, including some new ones. So I invite you, I think the article has been linked up in Twitter today and retweeted by the Profila account, so go and read it. Put a comment in, or find me on Twitter and send me a message if you want. But it really does a good job of capturing how we see the world, how we see the challenges of how human interactions and brand interactions evolved in a direction that was less useful for both sides. And we think there's a better way, and we think that's the Profila Way. So thank you, and have a great day.